I would like to talk a little bit about these stories today, and there, as you probably can imagine, there are many stories and many different stories. So I have not chosen to go with the 3 projects like everybody else. I think I have about 20 little stories, so they're more sound bites. And I promise you will see more people and not straight lines in this presentation than you probably have seen the whole week, because my world is all about people and working with people, which comes with the package. I'm a neighborhood planner, and neighborhood planning is something exists obviously in every country. In England, neighborhood planning has changed significantly about 5 years ago. And I can truly, maybe I didn't know exactly what I was 10 years ago, but today I know I'm a neighborhood planner. I work with neighborhood planning groups. I will explain a little bit more what they are. I also work sometimes with the Princess Foundation, but I also work as national advisor for Locality, which is a large organization supporting thousands of neighborhood planning groups across England. The Royal Town PIanning Institute. I teach a little bit at the University College London, and I'm a Kentish towner. I'm a Londoner, after all, which very much sort of forms your opinion about urban development. This is just a little collage of the colorfulness of my working life. It's all workshops, it's on streets, it's in spaces, it's in old buildings and new buildings, and it often involves more than 50 people at a time. Why neighborhood planning? I really actually haven't had a lot of chance to think about this very much in the last 5 years, but I think it all started with an internship in the Philippines in 1995, when I was exposed to community planning run by the Canadian Urban Institute, and I saw the power of enabling people and landowners to change their own lives and their own destiny. And I saw how people change through learning about making places. That very much influenced my way of looking at the world. Then obviously being German, so I lived in Germany, I got my first university degree in Germany, but then I went to England, and both countries have a long tradition in collaborative planning and collaborative working. And relatively, well, the Germans have a very strong planning system, and the English system is probably relatively weak, but they still have a lot of regulations, which often is pretty much a headache for everybody involved. And a third project I'd like to mention is doing neighborhood planning, doing urbanism without any money. In 2002, I was working for a German company in Luxembourg, and we had a sort of a small village, very small project, and it was all about what this village is supposed to be look and feel like in 20 years' time. There was no money, so we had to send off the inhabitants to do their own research. We were all very nervous. All the professionals we had architects, planners, transport people. We were all really nervous, but there was no way we could have done the research without the residents doing most of it themselves. And the most amazing thing happened, like 6-8 weeks later. We got more information, better stories, better insights than any of us professionals could have ever produced. So they went on bike tours to research basically the whole area. They went to other places to find out how you can move around in the future. They took pictures of buildings they loved, of spaces they loved, and it completely changed our approach to doing work in the public domain. This little diagram down here, it's actually quite old. It's from 1969. It's from Einstein. We call it he called it the ladder of participation. And I think it is just an indication when you get taught at university what the different ways of consultation might be. I'd just like to inform you a little bit about maybe the different state manipulation is also a part of engagement. And the top one is called citizen control. My world is often sitting in stage 6, partnership, recognizing that people who live in areas know a lot, and they will be impacted on what you do as a professional in their neighborhood. And accepting them as equal partners is a particular important part. And in England, we now do this as part of our practice because we are enabled through something called the Localism Bill. And the third little element of my little why I'm doing neighborhood planning was a presentation by Tim Brown. He's the CEO of IDEO. If you haven't heard of IDEO, I highly recommend you to go to their website. This is not about architecture, it's actually about service design and innovation. And he gave at Imperial College presentation in this design for people. That's what we used to do and sometimes still do. Design with people is what we probably should do. And maybe in the future, it will be also designed by people. And he kind of told that story in a very succinct way, which stayed with me until today. I also have worked on, this is what I probably call corporate international urbanism. This is Jebel Ali Airport City in Dubai. I was there for quite a long time, studying the master plan and assessing the master plan and making, with my team down there, recommendations how to improve the master plan. There were no mosques there, the transport system didn't work, but we had amazingly built models. So this is 10 years ago, and it was, quite honestly, it was an amazing experience of working on that scale. Mind-blowing, a bit like playing SimCity in the real world. And they're building it, which is even crazier, but it is happening. And today, this scale of corporate international urbanism happens all around the world. And I found out it's not for me. The next stage, when I worked as a master planner and design organizer and manager in a design practice called Urban Initiatives. So this is neighborhood scale, this is north of London. You can see this is, let's say it becomes more human scale, 400 properties, there's a high street, there are gardens, there's a public space. We build models, very, very well paid to do all of this by the public sector. And I call this public sector housing-led urbanism. This is a particular important story of the English way of looking at urban regeneration, because housing generates income for the public infrastructure. Maybe if you look at the date, it's 2009. That was even became policy of the local authority. It never happened. So that's the other experience. You spend £200,000–300,000 on making beautiful plans, you work with community, but actually nothing happens. I mean, we know a couple of things did happen, but nothing really relevant to talk about. And then we knew at the same time what is called tactical urbanism. All of this is going on. All of this small grain stuff, the stuff on the streets, in the squares, where lots of people are involved, and change actually does happen there. It does happen. And for me, this global element, the neighborhood scale development that don't work or not get delivered, and then this tactical urbanism provided basically the spectrum for me to decide to become a neighborhood planner. And during the same time, we had in England, like everybody else in the Western world, a crisis, and it's still happening in some places, in some countries. We also got a new government in 2010, quite significant. From Labour, we came to Conservatives and a Liberal Democrat government, which also meant our old planning system got completely changed in 2010. And it was a planning system that was already very much in favor of consultation and engaging the people who live in the area. But we also have austerity in England, and a lot of the local authorities have no money anymore, and they will even have less money in the future. England is also one of the most centralized countries in the Western world. So, and interestingly, the department who's now in charge of neighborhood planning and a lot of community rights is called Decentralization Department. So there's a tendency in that shift basically resulted in, literally a different way of doing planning, providing public services. And while all of this was happening, we still have, between 2001 and 2011, 3.7 million more people in England. and we're not building more houses. So there's a housing crisis as well. So it's not got easier. And in a way, maybe the issues were so concentrated and so unimaginable to be resolved that they really required a significant change of tactics, how to do urban development and urban regeneration. And it gave us in the industry also a chance, because we didn't have a lot of work actually in 2010 and 11. It gave us a chance to think how we as professionals respond to this policy change. So this is a bit of framework, basically, of how I arrived, what I'm doing, but now I really would like to tell you the stories of all these people I got to work with. And I sort of gave it two titles. One is A Quiet Revolution is happening in England. It's called Localism, Neighbourhood Planning. And then a particular project, which I've been involved in for about 3 years now, on and off. It's called Looks and Urbans. That's a design charrette as a method. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. But this interesting one is hosted by the community group. So within not basically being able to influence what happens in their historic town, they're now hosting design charrettes where the landowners and the developers, the architects, the transport people, the residents all come together. There's a website, if you want to know more about neighborhood planning, called My Community Rights. And there's a book, we call it the Green Bible, Neighborhood Plans Roadmap. I don't want to go into too much detail. The most important thing is neighborhood planning is power, basically. It enables community members who are forming a group to develop neighborhood planning policy. So this is not made by the local authority or by a government agency. It's produced by a group of people that are basically working really, really hard for quite a long time. And that it's an empowerment, basically. But it's also, obviously, it comes with responsibility, because you can also grant planning permission. So that could be for small sites. So they could define how a place could look like, a house, a square, and they can grant planning permission. And the third one is about investment. Government has enabled, I call it incentives maybe, to allow groups, so if you have policies and projects, and this is how it works in England, if then houses will be built and employment will be provided, there will be a charge, they call it community infrastructure levy, that has to be paid by the developer. That is often between £100 a square meter or £500 a square meter. The community will receive 25% of that money and can deliver projects. This is the process to produce a neighborhood plan. I'm not going to go into lots of detail, but the first 3 little signposts are about forming a neighborhood forum, then lots of engagement and community involvement, policy, development, ideation, what do we really want for our area, evidence-based gathering, how can we support what we want, how is this actually deliverable, can this be part of the existing local planning system. Importantly, neighborhood plans need to be aligned with the upper planning layers. And then the very, very long process of writing a neighborhood plan is up here. And then there will be an examination by an independent examiner. That's usually a planner. There will be 2 phases of 6 weeks consultation. So more engagement and more checking if you're doing the right thing. And importantly, that's probably very, very significant, there is a referendum at the end. So people who live in the area, defined as neighborhood area, will be asked to vote on the laws, the regulations, the planning policies for this area. That is local democracy, direct democracy, that's never been really generated in England. And that within the planning system is, we think, quite fundamental. So this was London, this is just London. There were 2 of these neighborhood forum areas in 2011. In In 2014, we have about 130. I think we have, 2014. So basically a year later, I think we're probably about 170 or 80. So lots of groups are taking up these new rights. This is from the government, like a little collage. This is not just a London story, this is actually much more an English story. This is in England. We have over 1,400 groups doing this, and 50 of these neighborhood plans have been to the referendum and been agreed and supported. This is a couple of numbers. 52 successful referendums, and support rates from 60%, turnout 60%, 59%, an average basically 32%. So if you have, and the areas are from about 500 people to 30,000 people in the terms of scale, what a neighborhood is. And it's over 6.1 million people will have the right to vote in one of these neighborhood planning processes. So this is quite significant. We are 80 million people in England and in the UK. And I think there's a sense that we're now at the curve from having for 2 or 3 years relatively little happening, that basically there is a real spread across the country. There's a little video. As so often in neighborhood planning, because there's very little money, it's been produced by a volunteer. And it's in Bristol, a small neighborhood called Weston. And this is sort of their introduction to their group. This is the neighborhood forum. This is a person who lives locally. And he basically will explain to us. Does this work?
This is Jackie, and she was born on the estate over 60 years ago. This is Roger. He's lived on the estate for over 30 years. And my name is Mark, and I've lived on the estate all of my life. We are all members of the Weston Planning Group, which represents the interests of residents in any plans to develop our estate. The planning group is made up of around 30 local people, including our local councillors. We have door-knocked the estate, asking local people what they would like to see happen in Weston in the future. We are combining these ideals and opinions with new planning powers given to us by the Localism Act to create a neighbourhood development plan. This plan sets out our planning policies for future land use in Weston. As local residents, the plan gives us a much stronger say in how our community is developed in the future. Weston is a post-war housing estate in northwest Bristol. There are over 7,000 people living in Weston, with lots of families and young people, as well as a growing elderly population. The area has been neglected for many years. Local services have closed, and there are derelict sites where community facilities have shut and where houses have been demolished. Although there is lots that is good about Weston, some things are less good. Many of the houses are of poor quality, the green spaces are not well looked after, buses are infrequent, and the roads don't encourage us to walk or cycle. As residents of Weston, we have an exciting opportunity to influence planned developments in our area that will address these problems, using our new neighbourhood development plan to help deliver community improvements. We need to make the most of these opportunities, and we are actively working with the council and other agencies to make it happen. We want to encourage as many residents as possible to be actively involved in deciding about the future of our neighbourhood. Work on the neighbourhood development plan started in 2012, when we consulted with local residents, using their views to create a community plan about all aspects of life in Weston. All of the land use issues raised in the community plan have now gone into forming our neighbourhood development plan, which focuses particularly on how land is best developed in Lawrence Weston for the future. We had lots of training from a range of experts who helped us draw the plan together. The Neighbourhood Development Plan sets out a series of policies, strict guidelines that anybody who wants to build in Lawrence Weston will need to comply with once the plan has been agreed and formally approved. Our Neighbourhood Development Plan will help us to build around 350 high-quality homes. These will be a mixture of houses for sale, shared ownership and social housing. The plan includes a local lettings policy to ensure that a significant amount of new affordable housing is made available to people already living in Lawrence Weston. Attract a new food store. A new food store on the old college site will help us access affordable food, create new jobs and increase the number of people shopping on Ridingleys. Build a new community health hub, a community facility to include improved GP facilities, health clinics, a library, employment, debt and benefit support, training and voluntary sector services. A place where the community can come together to access services and to socialise. Address energy efficiency and climate change issues. 2015 is the year that Bristol is European Green Capital. We want to make sure that new building developments are energy efficient to reduce people's fuel bills and to look after the planet for our future generations. Protect and improve our green spaces. So for example, we don't want any acre fields to be all houses. We want to see the wildlife corridor protected and the BMX track and play area improved. The plan safeguards and improves Moor End Gardens, Beverston Gardens, Stradling Road and many other green spaces in Lawrence Weston. Improve the transport system by influencing future bus routes, by investing in new and improved cycle links and by improving access and safety for pedestrians. Create more employment opportunities by creating flexible workspaces for new and growing businesses and by improving links to jobs across the north of Bristol and the city centre. We want to create a place that people are proud of, a place that lifts the spirit. The residents of Lawrence Weston deserve it. We want and need more people to get involved in shaping the future of Lawrence Weston. There's lots of information on our website on how you can do this. Visit www.ambitionlw.org to find out more. We want to know what you think of this draft neighbourhood development plan. We will use your comments to further improve this document. Then we'll be asking you to come out and vote on the final version. If people vote yes to the plan, then the document becomes the planning policy for the neighbourhood and all future planning applications will need to consider and comply with the plan. Lawrence Weston is changing for the better, but we want more people to get involved in shaping the future. There's lots of information on our website on how you can do this. Visit www.ambitionlw.org to find out more. We're planning on becoming one of the first neighbourhoods in Bristol to take charge of our own future in this way. Now that is something to be proud of.
So this was produced by a local resident, and that's one of the things when you work in urban areas. There are many people with many skills. There are many architects involved in neighborhood planning. There are many planners, transport people involved, many local historians. So the idea that as a professional you will work with residents who don't know is a very difficult one to start off a good process. And when you work in these processes, you realize how many people have skills that are useful for what we have to do as professionals in this environment. I'm often the only person who is paid in the room in my work. And so I depend on making people coming into a process and helping to deliver some of these ambitions. I'm now thinking I'd be able to go back to the presentation. Yes. I have a particular way how to do this, and there are lots of other ways how people can do this. And there's a large community or growing community of neighborhood planners. who are involved in this, and that's professional and non-professional ones. I like to look at these as a series of events, from producing, getting organized, and then having large workshop events to produce the plan and the referendum. But I also encourage, every time I'm in a process, to deliver small projects on the ground. So what happens here at the referendum isn't, because that can take up to 2 or 3 years, this process. It is relevant, but it's not too relevant, because you have delivered already change on the ground. And that's where this tactical urbanism I was mentioning earlier comes in. So you deliver while you plan. Because planning isn't very sexy for many people. Planning is a very daunting and probably boring exercise, and you need to kind of consider, because nobody is paid and it's their local neighborhood. There is passion, but there's also only limited amount of time people can spend in these processes. So for me, one of the key aspects is to find out with the community, with the members in the neighborhood forum, what really does matter and how that neighborhood plan and the process can help to deliver this. You need to identify this vision for the area first and be as loose as possible, but as definitive and ambitious as it needed be. And you have projects and policies that need to address objectives and help to deliver this vision in the future. This is a very simplistic way of putting it, but getting these arrows to hit the objectives in the vision is a real skill, and it's daunting for people who've never done this before. This is another little example. I worked with this group in Bristol. This is Old Market Quarter. This is actually just extracts from their draft neighborhood plan, which is out at consultation. This is Paul Bradburn. He's a local architect. He's the chair of the neighborhood forum, and he built this. So this is his little card, and he goes about to collect in the whole neighborhood the wish and what people want to see happening. And that's been literally in every single part of the neighborhood. This is a little timeline. You see loads of things happened. They started in 2011, and we're now only, well, we're a bit further down the line here now, but they have a draft plan now, which is the main work. They did an analysis and assessed the quality of the buildings, one of the evidence base. They did this for public spaces, they did this for planning policy, for conservation area guidance, and so on and so on. And then they developed this vision. They have a set of words, they have a diagrammatic proposal, which they used right at the beginning of the process. They run a design charrette, and then they developed this as a visual guidance of where they want to be in the future. And this is a very ambitious project. If you can see basically the transport project towards the south of the town. And this is just an example of a policy for a particular site, policy C13. They're basically identifying the orange are new buildings, currently car parks, street greening, and then they talk about a bit like development briefs, design briefs, what they expect from this site. So in a way, from your architectural point of view, this is brief development, but it's produced by the local community based on all this evidence, and it will get tested, but they also have large projects. And one of the things neighborhood planning gets criticized is because of the scale, that they don't consider the upper levels. This is a massive transport project you saw earlier in the diagram. This is this down here. This is a complete realignment of the ring road in Bristol. And they're ambitious, they're trying to achieve this because it's one of the key things they learned from talking with the landowners and the community that will really change their neighborhood for the better. So I work along all of this process, maybe up to draft policy writing. What I'm particularly interested in is dialogue and conversations and learning. And that sort of, I've always done this in my 15 years of working also for developers and local authorities. But I kind of, in neighborhood planning, because there's very, very little money, you kind of start refocusing what really is important. And this is one of the key aspects, is the quality of conversation you create. And that has to do with the questions you ask. And that doesn't require fancy drawings or doesn't require very shiny. In fact, sometimes it's counterproductive. So we try to kind of emphasize that you need to focus on good conversations and visualize them in a big scale to share them locally. This is one tool, so I'm now going to run you through a whole set of tools. This is in Highgate and used in many other places in London and around, and actually even in Italy so far. My Wish for Highgate, little card made by the local people. Hundreds of them were collected, basically, then categorized, and you get a sense of what is important to people. So here we have streets, there's Pond Square as a particular area, green spaces, heritage, and they're all personally written by the people, which is incredibly powerful. And you know where they live and their age. Doesn't cost a lot, you just need people. These blackboards, and actually our students from my group done this week at Via Padua. So one of the key challenges is how you get involved with the local small businesses. We have business neighborhood forum areas where the businesses vote as well, but not in many so far. So in Soho, for instance, that's a business neighborhood forum. But how you get to know what these people say? Well, you just go where they are. And we use these blackboards, and we have this done now thousands of times. Volunteers do this, and they collect whole street views, and then basically you have a sense. This is Malan, she's Sandhurst Market, number 6. These are her 3 best ideas. We know who she is, we know what she does. And you can collect this. You don't have to write long, boring reports on this. If somebody doesn't want to be photographed, well, you just take a picture of the context. And then you collect them and make exhibitions, bring them together, and so on. Very simple. If you have empty properties, I've seen this work first from Candy Chang in New Orleans, who done quite sort of similar work already in 2010, very much inspired me. This is in my neighborhood, a property that's been empty for about 3 years, and we needed to re-emphasize the conversation on what could be done with this property instead of just leaving it to its destiny, as in staying empty. Some communities decide to make trees with wishes. If you have more children involved, they write little cartolinas, little postcards from the future. This was a work in Bognor Regis. Seafront strategy is a coastal town with many, many issues and challenges, but also a great, proud history. And this is by Joan. They're writing from the future, basically, so you start to envisage how a place could change. And these are all planning directors, large landowners, and this was a sort of a key stakeholder event. And they're all kind of friendly and kindly wrote their postcards, and were very curious how then that could be translated in a vision and objectives. We do the same thing online. These are the blackboards. When you work with young people, you need to think about how you can make it more attractive to them to offer their ideas and thoughts. But then you have collected all of this stuff, all the ideas, the thoughts. You had hundreds, maybe thousands of conversations. What do you do with them? Well, we bring them together. It's one of the clouds in, so they can be, you can develop a shared understanding, you learn, and you can resolve some of these conflicts between the man and the woman, and the straight lines, and the whatever sort of mock architecture. So you discuss this, and there are sometimes really heated discussions going on at these events. We have often 2 or 3 professional people who help, but not every time. Sometimes you're on your own. This is from East Shoreditch. I think we not have enough time to show this. No. But it's a typical scene, map drawing, people working around, discussions, heated discussions. This is in South London in Grove Park. But then you draw up what the community has mapped. So this is an asset map. This is an area called Grove Park. This is about 3 kilometers in length. So a lot of people who live down here don't know what's happening at the other end. So this is a way of visualizing and helping people to understand what their neighborhood is about, and what is working, what isn't working, what might be priorities for change. This is a map drawn on the day by the community with a little bit support, and we just redrafted them quickly in Illustrator. This helps the community to, so these are our priorities, these are our centers, these are our connections, these are areas we need to protect as a stepping stone in this process of developing policies. But you also do stuff like this. You're out and about in the square. This is my neighborhood in Kentish Town. And you collect particular ideas for a location. It's luxury to spend a whole day as a professional in an area and just talk to hundreds or maybe even 50 or 60 people, and you learn incredible amounts about the functionality, the beauty, how this place could function in the future. And then we have illustrators who help us then to translate all these ideas in something that makes sense to people. This is my neighborhood, this is my tube station in London. I hope this will happen soon. We do similar work, and that's not neighborhood planning. This is in Brick Lane. You might be familiar with Brick Lane. This is in East London. It's one of our most diverse areas, where it's actually quite difficult to understand what people want, because they're we have tribes, very posh, and the hipster is born on the north part, basically, of Brick Lane, but we also have 30, 40 years of a quite established community of Bangladeshi who is cooking for us all these amazing foods. So there's a north and south divide, so you need to understand this. So you talk to people. This is a Roman road. You just go. We counted, we had 1,000 years of wisdom in that room for 3 hours. No history book could have told us the stories that informed the design process after this. You translate this in action plans. These are individual projects. Some of them are sort of physical design projects like square improvements, shop fronts, infills. Others are much more about collaboration and working together. And this is a budget allocation. This project is north of London, very small. It's a very historic area where the Magna Carta started their journey in St. Albans. And I run you through very quickly. Design Chevette, 3 parts, not a lot of funding for this one. We start off one evening, you collect ideas, you work through on the second day, on the first day during the whole day, and you have models and movable stuff to help you. And the third part, you present the ideas back to the open community and you vote on them. Our client was the city of St. Albans, but the event was hosted by Look St. Albans, the community group. We had design guidance at hand. We wrote this 2 or 3 years before with the community together. Paving materials. You offer input into the process via projects from elsewhere. This is project by Architettura from Paris, which is not the right scale for St. Albans for our site, but it manifested an approach to how the site could be designed very, very clearly and well expressed. So we sort of elaborated on this in the project. You bring in ideas from elsewhere as the professional, we knew roughly from the conservation area statement what is possible and what might not be possible. England is full of rules. And you inspire. We had 3 of us, Jan Majkak and Justin Bear is an expert in sustainable buildings. He couldn't actually join us on the day. This is the site. We worked through various scales from city down to building. This is the building. That's our site. So very, very small. It's a historic building, over 100 years old. And interesting about this project was that the funding that could be generated from our site, Mosta's site, will be reinvested in the new museum in St. Albans. There was a clear incentive for the community to have a halfway of a developer's hat on that made the discussion actually unusually easy in that sense, because it was clear we need to generate enough funding, or more funding we can generate the better, because that will help to deliver the new museum. Little impression from the highest point in St. Albans. You see it's very green. This is the old town hall, city center, and our site is just there in the trees. You can see lots of people. This came from the client, the vision, and then we asked the community basically how that could be delivered. We got many, many answers, as you can see on the back wall. On the next day, we worked on 2 different groups. They had the same brief, and then worked on options. We used these little 2-scale models. and we sort of had various stages of this model process. Was question about layout, what you do with the public spaces, and is it be public space or not. So this is just sort of exploring ideas, and it's incredible what happens if you give people tools to work with, and how productive these discussions are. And then there's a vote. So we developed basically 4 schemes, and you vote. And you had a winner. This is a very small site, not very complicated in that sense, but it was a major achievement to have a concept together that helps to inform the planning process and informs the landowner for the detailed planning application that comes out of this in terms of what to do with existing structures, with the layout, with the scale of block structure, the landscaping, appearance, movement, and quantums. Because we had 2 scale models, we could quickly get the quantums together, basically, and applied them to valuation data. This was the winner. Very different to straight lines. But imagine this in a very historic context in St. Albans. And for having 50 people working on this basically for 2.5 days was a major investment from the landowner. But interesting is now that the client architect presented a next version of this, and there is still work that needs to be done, but it's relatively close to what the community as a whole collaboratively achieved. And I find I'm particularly pleased for the community and for the process that the landowner has now decided not to sell the land to a developer, but to keep the site and develop it themselves. So they can deliver more of that design vision that's been developed by the members of the public. I'm almost done. One slide. Yes. So my answers, why co-designing with many local people makes sense. I think you gain a lot of knowledge that is hidden, knowledge that is nowhere written down and usually not shared. You can get a lot of inspiration out of this work, and it challenges your own values and our values. You ask better questions, and in the end, I think you create better places. That's it. And I'd like to invite you, if you see how that works in practice, come to Via Padua tomorrow evening at 4:30 at the Chiesetta, and you see what the students did over the course of the week, trying out some of these methods and engaging with the community, and see how they got inspired to do their work maybe differently. Thank you.